The alarm pierced the darkness at 4:30 a.m., its shrill tone cutting through the silence. Of the master bedroom and the Marina District home. James Foster's hand moved with practiced precision, silencing the device before it completed its second ring. He had always been a light sleeper, the alarm more formality than necessity. His eyes adjusted to the darkness, registering the empty space beside him where his wife's body should have been. The sheets were cold, undisturbed. James ran his palm over the vacant pillow, his face betraying no emotion. Lorraine hadn't come home. He rose from the bed with military efficiency, a holdover from his father's influence, and padded across the hardwood floors to the in-suite bathroom. The mirror reflected a man in his prime, 34 years old, with intense blue eyes and the lean, muscular build of someone who treated fitness as non-negotiable. The carefully maintained 3-day stubble framed a jawline that had graced financial magazine profiles twice in the past year. Yet none of his colleagues at Hamilton Investments had ever seen what lurked behind those eyes. In moments of solitude, James Foster, rising star of San Francisco's financial district, went through his morning ritual with methodical precision. Cold shower, electric razor, cologne, 2 spritzes, no more. Gray Tom Ford suit. Patek Philippe watched a gift to himself when he made senior analyst. Blue tie with subtle diagonal strikes. His appearance was another component of his life that operated on controlled parameters. He checked his phone while his Italian espresso machine hummed in the kitchen. Still no messages from Lorraine. This would be unusual for most couples, but not necessarily for them. Not lately. Her PR position at Edge magazine often involved evening events, client dinners, networking. She had texted him around 10 p.m., corporate party running late. Don't wait up. James dialed her number, listening to the rings that eventually surrendered to voicemail. This is Lorraine Foster. Leave a message and it'll get back to you when I can. It's me, James said, his voice neutral. Call when you get this. The kitchen island gleamed under recessed lighting as he reviewed his presentation for the day. 62 slides detailing a high-yield investment strategy for Somerset Capital, a client worth $500 million. The material was impeccable, his delivery would be flawless. He never approached anything with less than thorough preparation. He tried Lorraine's phone twice more before 5 a.m. No answer. At precisely 5:03 a.m., the front door lock disengaged with a soft click. James looked up from his tablet, face composed but fingers imperceptibly tightening around his espresso cup. He watched as Lorraine stumbled slightly when entering, catching herself on the decorative console table in the foyer. Her Giorgio Armani clutch, a Christmas gift from him, clattered against the marble surface. James observed her silently from the kitchen. Her black cocktail dress was wrinkled, her carefully highlighted brown hair disheveled. In a way that spoke of more than just wind. The delicate makeup that she had likely applied meticulously yesterday evening was smudged around her eyes. But most telling was the way she froze when she saw him, like a teenager caught breaking curfew rather than a 29-year-old professional woman returning to her husband. You're up early, she said, forcing a casual tone that fell flat in the pristine kitchen. I had the Somerset presentation today. James kept his voice even. You didn't come home last night. Lorraine's smile faltered as she put her clutch down and moved toward the refrigerator. The event ran really late, and then some of us went for drinks after. I crashed at Emily's. I should have called. James noted the slight tremor in her hands as she poured herself a glass of water. His eyes caught a detail, a small bruise just visible on her neck, partially concealed by her hair. Not a bruise from an injury. Something else entirely. You're lying, Lorraine. The glass paused halfway to her lips. Her eyes, hazel, and usually dancing with confidence, now flickered with something between fear and defiance. What are you talking about? Emily's is in Chicago this week for the marketing conference. You mentioned it on Sunday. The silence that followed was absolute. James could hear the expensive wall clock ticking in the living room, the distant hum of early morning traffic beginning to build outside their window. He waited, patient as always. The boardroom had taught him that silence was often the most effective tool for extracting truth. Lorraine put the glass down, water sloshing slightly over the rim. She gripped the counter edge, her knuckles whitening. James, just tell me the truth. His voice remained calm, almost frighteningly so. Where were you last night, Lorraine? She looked up at him then, mascara slightly smeared beneath her lower lashes. For a moment, James saw flashes of their past, Lorraine in a white dress on their wedding day 5 years ago, promising forever with tears in those same eyes. Lorraine laughing as they toured this house for the first time, whispering excited plans for their future. Lorraine asleep against his shoulder on their flight to Bali for their 3rd anniversary. I was with someone. Her voice was barely audible. James nodded once, the movement so controlled it was barely perceptible. Does it matter? A flash of defiance, quickly subdued by his unwavering stare. It matters. She inhaled deeply, then released the words in a rush. 2 guys from Elevation nightclub. I didn't know them before last night. The confession hung in the air between them like toxic smoke. James felt something cold and hard settle in his chest, but his face remained impassive. Years of negotiating billion-dollar deals had perfected his poker face, a mask so convincing that even he sometimes forgot what lay beneath it. 2 men. He repeated the words with clinical detachment. Strangers. Lorraine's composure cracked. I was drunk, James. The corporate party was boring, so Melissa and I went to Elevation afterward. You never want to go dancing anymore. These guys bought us drinks and you went home with them. His tone was flat. With one of them. His friend joined, later. Her voice faltered as she watched for his reaction. James stood perfectly still, processing this information with frightening clarity. He noted the way Lorraine was watching him, almost expectantly. She was waiting for the explosion, the shouting, the accusations, perhaps even tears. That would be the normal reaction, wouldn't it? The human response to learning your spouse of 5 years had spent the night with 2 strangers. Instead, he picked up his tablet, closed the presentation file, and slid the device into his briefcase. James? Uncertainty crept into her voice. Say something. Did you use protection? The question, delivered with the same tone he might use to inquire about the weather forecast, seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. Yes, they did. Both of them? She flinched. James nodded again, then checked his watch. I have a 7:30 meeting before the Somerset presentation. Lorraine stared at him, confusion replacing fear. That's it? We're not going to talk about this? What else is there to say? He straightened his tie. You made a choice last night, Lorraine. I made a mistake, she insisted, moving toward him. It was stupid and meaningless. It won't happen again. James stepped back, maintaining the distance between them. You should get some sleep. You look exhausted. Something in his calm demeanor seemed to frighten her more than rage would have. James, please. React. Yell at me. Tell me you hate me. Something. Would that make you feel better? His eyes met hers, and for just a moment, something dark and cold flashed across there. Blue depths. Would my pain ease your guilt? Lorraine recoiled as if slapped. No, that's not what I meant. I have to go. He picked up his briefcase, movements precise and controlled. I want to be home for dinner. Don't wait up. As he moved toward the door, Lorraine called after him, voice breaking. James, what does this mean? For us? He paused at the threshold, back still turned to her. I don't know yet. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Lorraine standing alone in the kitchen. Surrounded by the trappings of their perfect life, now teetering on the edge of collapse. The Somerset presentation went flawlessly. James delivered each point with confidence and clarity, answering questions with the insight that had made him a rising star at Hamilton Investments. No one in the boardroom could have guessed that behind his immaculate presentation was a man whose personal life had just imploded. Exceptional work, Foster, Richard Harmon, the firm's managing director, clapped him on the shoulder as the clients file out. Somerset's bringing their entire portfolio to us. That's an additional $200 million under management. Thank you, sir. James gathered his materials with practiced efficiency. We should celebrate. Drinks at the View tonight? I appreciate the offer, but I have some personal matters to attend to. Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. Everything all right? Just some financial restructuring. James offered a reassuring smile that never reached his eyes. My wife and I are considering some investment adjustments. Smart man, always planning ahead. Richard nodded approvingly. Rain check on those drinks, then. In James, he lowered his voice. The executive committee is meeting next month to discuss the partner track. After today, your name will be at the top of the list. James nodded his thanks and made his way to his office. The corner space on the 37th floor offered sweeping views of San Francisco Bay, a trophy of his meteoric rise through the company's ranks. He closed the door, set his briefcase down, and for the first time since 5:03 a.m. allowed himself to feel. The rage came first, a white-hot surge that made his hands tremble and his jaw clench. He loosened his tie, suddenly finding it difficult to breathe. Images flashed through his mind, Liren with two faceless men, their hands on her body. In their bed, no, not their bed. Somewhere else. A stranger's apartment. Did that make it better or worse? James moved to the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass, forcing himself to breathe evenly. Control. Always control. When he felt his heart rate steady, he reached for his phone and dialed the number not stored. In his contacts, Pacific Trust Bank. This is Margaret Wilson speaking. Margaret, it's James Foster. I need to speak with Henry about my accounts. It's urgent. Of course, Mr. Foster. Let me connect you right away. As he waited, James opened his laptop and logged into their joint banking portal. 5 years of marriage consolidated into digits on a screen. He began making notes, methodical even in crisis. Henry Phillips here. What can I do for you today? Henry, I need to make some adjustments to my accounts. Privately and immediately. Certainly. May I ask what type of adjustments? James stared out at the bay, his reflections superimposed over the water. I need to separate my assets from my joint accounts with my wife. A brief pause. I see. We can certainly help with that. Would you like to come in this afternoon? It'll be there at 2. After ending the call, James sat motionless at his desk, thoughts crystallizing into a clear path forward. The initial shock had passed, replaced by something colder and more focused. He had always been strategic, calculating traits that had served him while in finance. Now, those same traits would guide him through this personal catastrophe. His phone buzzed with a text from Lauren, "Please come home early. We need to talk." He didn't respond. Instead, he opened his contact list and scrolled to another name when he hadn't called in. Over a year. Meridian Legal Associates, how may I direct your call? Lauren Sykes, please. Tell him it's James Foster. The receptionist put him on hold. James waited, tapping his Mont Blanc pan against the leather desk blotter in a steady rhythm. James? This is a surprise. Lawrence's voice carried the cultured tones of old money in Harvard law. How's married life treating you? Not well, as it happens. That's why I'm calling. Lawrence's tone shifted immediately to professional concern. I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on? I need divorce counsel. Discreetly. I see. No questions, no platitudes. This was why James had chosen Lawrence when drawing up their prenuptial agreement 5 years ago. My calendar is tight today, but I can see you at 5:30. It'll be there. James ended the call and turned back to his computer, opening a new document. With methodical precision, he began listing assets, accounts, properties. The home in Marina. The vacation cabin in Lake Tahoe. Investment portfolios. Art collection. 2 vehicles. Their life together reduced to an inventory. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Foster, your 1 o'clock is here. James closed the document. Send them in. He smoothed his tie, adjusted his cuffs, and rose to greet his client with a smile that revealed nothing of the turmoil beneath. By the time James pulled into the driveway of their Marina District home at 8:45 p.m., he had visited the bank, met with Lawrence Sykes, and made one additional stop that had taken longer than anticipated. The house was lit up, warm lights spilling from the windows into the cool December evening. For a moment, James sat in his Audi, staring at the home they had purchased 3 years ago. Spanish colonial revival architecture, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a view of the bay from the master suite. Their dream home. The foundation for the family they had planned to start next year. Now, it felt like a stage set, beautiful but ultimately false. He retrieved his briefcase and a small brown paper bag from the passenger seat before walking to the front door. Inside, soft jazz played from the integrated sound system, Coltrane, his favorite. The scent of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air. Lorraine appeared in the hallway, wearing a simple black dress he had always admired. On her hair was freshly washed, makeup subtle but flawless. She had made an effort. "You're home." Relief colored her voice. "I made dinner." James set his briefcase down, expression unreadable. "I already ate." Her smile faltered but quickly recovered. "That's okay. We can just talk. I opened the Barolo from our anniversary." He followed her into the living room, noting the carefully set scene, dim lights, candles, 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, a peace offering, or perhaps an attempt at seduction as distraction. "How was your day?" she asked, pouring the deep red wine into his glass. "Productive." James sat in the armchair rather than beside her on the sofa. Somerset signed. "The full portfolio." "That's wonderful." Her enthusiasm seemed genuine. "That's the promotion, right? They'll have to make you partner now." "Likely." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Lorraine fidgeted with her wine glass, turning it slowly by the stem. "James, about this morning, were they worth it?" The question emerged calm and quiet. Lorraine stilled, color draining from her face. "What? The 2 men. Was one night with them worth risking everything we've built?" Her voice cracked. "God, no. It was stupid and meaningless and the biggest mistake of my life." James nodded, taking a measured sip of his wine. The 2015 Barolo, $300 a bottle, purchased on their 4th anniversary in Italy. It tasted like ash now. "Why did you do it?" Lorraine set her glass down, hands trembling slightly. "I don't know. I was drunk, feeling restless. You've been so focused on work lately and She stopped herself. "No, that's not fair. This isn't your fault. I have no excuse." "Was it the first time?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide. Of course it was." James studied her face, searching for tells. A slight twitch at the corner of her eye. A nervous swallow. 5 years of marriage had taught him resettled signs of dishonesty. "I see." "James, please." She moved to kneel in front of him, reaching for his hands. "I love you. What we have, it's everything to me. I made a terrible mistake, but it meant nothing." He allowed her to take his hands, watching her with a detachment that seemed to unnerve her. "Do you want a divorce?" Her voice was barely audible, fragile with fear. James considered the question, or at least appeared to. In truth, he had already set the process in motion that afternoon with Lawrence. "I don't know what I want yet," he replied after a calculated pause. "I need time." Relief flooded her features. "Of course. Whatever you need. He'll sleep in the guest room. He'll give you space. He'll do anything to fix this." He nodded, retrieving the brown paper bag he had brought in with him. "I got you something." Confusion crossed her face as she accepted the bag. "You got me a gift? Today? Open it." Lauren reached inside and pulled out a small glass bottle. Confusion turned to recognition as she held the French perfume in her palm, the same scent he had given her for their 1st anniversary. "Your signature scent," he said softly. "The one you were wearing when we met." Tears welled in her eyes. "You remembered?" James stood, looking down at her. "I remember everything, Lauren. Every promise. Every anniversary. Every moment that mattered." He moved toward the hallway, pausing at the threshold. "He'll be sleeping in the guest room tonight. I have an early meeting tomorrow." Her voice stopped him. "Do you think you can ever forgive me?" He turned back, his expression softening for the first time that day. "I don't know. But I'm willing to try." The hope that bloomed across her features almost made him regret the lie. Almost. As he ascended the stairs, Lauren remained in the living room, clutching the perfume bottle to her chest like a talisman. She didn't see the cold calculation that had returned to his eyes the moment his back was turned. She didn't know that the perfume was meant as a reminder, not a gesture of reconciliation. And she certainly couldn't have guessed that while she had been preparing dinner, James had been meeting with a private investigator named Michael Reese, who had handed him a thick manila envelope containing surveillance photos spanning the past 6 months. Photos of Lauren entering hotels with men who weren't her husband. James closed the guest room door behind him and loosened his tie. From his briefcase, he removed the envelope and spread its contents across the bed. Dates. Evidence of a betrayal far deeper and longer lasting than a single drunken night. He had suspected for months. Little inconsistencies. Late nights. Weekend work emergencies. Changes in her behavior. But suspicion was different from confirmation. Now he had proof. James carefully gathered the photos and returned them to the envelope. From the guest room window, he could see the lights of San Francisco shimmering across the bay. Beautiful. Deceptive. Like his marriage. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Lauren Sykes, proceeding as discussed. We'll need full discovery protocol. The reply came quickly, understood. Paperwork being prepared. Meeting with investigators set for Thursday. James set the phone down and began to undress, movements precise and controlled as always. His mind, however, was anything but calm. Behind the composed exterior that had fooled his colleagues, his clients, and now his wife, a plan was forming, meticulous and devastating. Lauren had made her choice. Now James would make his. And unlike hers, his would be carefully calculated, patiently executed, and ultimately far more consequential. For 3 days, James Foster maintained the facade of a husband considering forgiveness. He returned home at reasonable hours, engaged in cautious conversation over dinner, and responded to Lawrence's tentative affections with calculated neutrality. Not cold enough to alarm her, not warm enough to comfort her. The perfect balance to keep her suspended in hopeful uncertainty. Each morning, Lawrence Sykes would seek his across the breakfast table, searching for signs of softening. Each night, she would hesitantly bid him good night as he retreated to the guest bedroom. The carefully selected perfume bottle remained on her vanity, unopened, a totem of potential reconciliation she seemed afraid to use, as if wearing it might somehow break the fragile. Behind this performance of domestic détente, James executed his strategy with the same precision that had earned him his reputation at Hamilton Investments. On the 4th morning after Lauren's confession, she shuffled into the kitchen at 7:15 a.m., night-towseled and reaching for the coffee maker. James sat at the island counter, drinking espresso and scrolling through his tablet. Morning, she offered tentatively, the ritual greeting they had maintained through the stream. Good morning, he replied, not looking up from his screen. The coffee maker gurgled as Lorraine prepared her usual blend. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of the sleep she'd been losing since her confession. James noted this detail with clinical detachment. I was thinking. She hesitated, gathering courage. Maybe we could have dinner out tonight? That new place on Valencia you mentioned last month? James sat down his tablet, meeting her hopeful gaze with measured consideration. I can't tonight. I have meetings that will run late. The disappointment was evident, but she recovered quickly. Actually, James said, his tone casual, I was thinking we might go away this weekend. The coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. Away? You mean like a trip? Lake Tahoe. The cabin. He returned to his tablet as if the suggestion weren't monumental. We could leave Friday after work, come back Sunday evening. The cabin on Lake Tahoe was their sanctuary, purchased 3 years into their marriage. Remote, peaceful, surrounded by pine forests and overlooking crystal waters. They'd made some of their happiest memories there. Hope bloomed across Lorraine's features. ID. Love it. He'll cancel my Saturday brunch with the girls. He'll make arrangements. James stood, gathering his briefcase. I should go. Market opens early today. As he moved toward the door, Lorraine called after him. James? Thank you for giving us a chance. He paused, offering a careful smile that never reached his eyes. We have history worth considering. The front door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Lorraine clutching her coffee mug, unaware that she had just witnessed one of James Foster's most convincing performances, even worthy of the investment had made yesterday in a consultation with Gloria Chin, the city's most ruthless divorce attorney. At precisely 8:47 a.m., while presenting a market analysis to colleagues, James phoned. Bust with an incoming call from Lorraine. He silenced it without breaking his sentence. The phone lit up again immediately. Then again. By the fourth call in succession, James excused himself from the conference room. Lorraine, in a meeting. What's wrong? Her voice came through in a panicked rush. My cards are declined. All of them. I'm at Nordstrom and they want process. The bank says they've been frozen. James leaned against the wall outside the conference room, face arranged in a concerned frown for the benefit of colleagues who might pass by. That's strange. Did they say why? Something about suspicious activity and a security hold. James, it's embarrassing. I'm standing at the counter with shopping bags and no way to pay. I see. He checked his watch. I can't leave right now. Use cash for now, and he'll look into it this afternoon. I don't carry much cash, you know that. Frustration edged into her voice. Can you call the bank? They'll listen to you. I'm presenting to the executive committee in 5 minutes, Lorraine. His tone carried just enough tension to suggest mounting impatience. Take a cab home, and he'll sort it out later. He ended the call before she could protest further, silencing his phone as he re-entered the conference room. Charles Winton, the company's CEO, raised an eyebrow at him. Everything all right, Foster? Just a minor domestic issue, James smiled apologetically. Where were we? As he resumed his presentation, James knew that Lorraine would spend the next several hours dealing with the systematic financial isolation he had arranged 2 days ago. All joint credit cards frozen. Access to their shared accounts temporarily suspended. The beginning of what Lawrence Sykes had called controlled asset separation. By noon, his phone had accumulated 7 missed calls from Lorraine and 3 from their bank. He responded to none of them as he worked through lunch, reviewing documents Lawrence had prepared detailed financial disclosures that would be required for the divorce proceedings. The prenuptial agreement they had signed 5 years ago would form the backbone of the settlement, but James had no intention of relying solely on legal contracts. No, this required a more comprehensive approach. At 2:30 p.m., James finally returned a call, not to Lorraine, but to Michael Rees, the private investigator. I have what you asked for, Rees said without preamble when he answered. Confirmed connections to at least 3 men over the past 8 months. Names, dates, locations. Electronic communications recovered from the cloud backup. It's all there. And the footage from the nightclub? That was trickier, but money talks. Security camera feeds from elevation show relieving with the 2 men at 1:47 a.m. I've also got street cam footage of them entering an apartment building on Brannan Street at 2:12 a.m. Send everything to the secure server address I provided. Already done. The pause. This is thorough work, Mr. Foster. You sure you want all this detail? Certainty requires evidence, Mr. Rees. James stared out his office window at the San Francisco skyline. From a man who values certainty. After ending the call, James opened his laptop to review the files Rees had uploaded. Photographs. Text messages. Credit card receipts from hotels. Email exchanges. The carefully documented betrayal of a 5-year marriage. He viewed each item with the same analytical detachment he applied to investment portfolios, including patterns, identifying inconsistencies, building a comprehensive understanding. The pain had not disappeared. It remained a steady pressure behind his sternum, but it had transformed into something more refined, more purposeful. This wasn't just about a drunken mistake with 2 strangers from a nightclub. This was about years of deception, calculated lies. A double life led by the woman who had promised him fidelity while standing in a white dress before their families and friends. James closed the laptop as his desk phone buzzed. Mr. Foster. There's a Ms. Amanda Carlyle here to see you. From Edge magazine? James checked his watch. Right on schedule. Send her in, please. The door opened to reveal a tall woman with sharp features and a sleek bob, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. She extended her hand. Mr. Foster. Thank you for seeing me on short notice. Ms. Carlyle. James shook her hand, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. How can Hamilton Investments be of service to Edge magazine? Amanda settled into the chair, crossing her legs precisely at the ankles. Actually, this isn't about financial services. I understand your wife, Lauren Foster, is the PR director at Edge? She is. James leaned back slightly, expression neutral. Amanda placed a slim portfolio on his desk. In the head of HR. This matter is delicate, which is why I thought it best to approach you directly rather than escalate it through official channels immediately. I appreciate discretion. What's the concern? We've discovered some irregularities in the client entertainment accounts that fall under your wife's purview. Amanda opened the portfolio, revealing spreadsheets and receipts. Specifically, personal expenses being charged to the company, events being reported with inflated attendance numbers, and some concerning patterns with particular clients. James examined the documents with a furrowed brow, the perfect picture of a concerned husband. This is the first in hearing of any issues. How serious is the situation? Serious enough that we're conducting a full audit. At minimum, there will be disciplinary action. At worst, she hesitated. Well, misappropriation of company funds exceeding certain thresholds becomes a criminal matter. I see. James rubbed his chin thoughtfully. And you're coming to me because, frankly, your reputation in financial circles is impeccable. I thought you might want the opportunity to address this privately with your wife before formal proceedings begin. Perhaps there are explanations or arrangements that could be made for restitution. James nodded slowly. I appreciate your discretion, Miss Carlyle. May I keep these copies? Of course. She rose to leave. We'll need a response by Monday. After that, I'm afraid the matter goes to our legal team. You'll have one. James escorted her to the door, shaking her hand again. Thank you for handling this sensitively. After Amanda left, James returned to his desk and examined the portfolio contents more carefully. The document showed exactly what he had expected because he had provided the information himself through carefully placed sources at Edge magazine. Small discrepancies he had discovered months ago but never mentioned to Lauren. Irregularities he had documented meticulously, waiting for the right moment to deploy them. That moment had now arrived. He picked up his phone and texted Lauren, coming home early. We need to talk. When James arrived home at 5:30 p.m., he found Lauren pacing the living room, still dressed in the clothes she'd worn shopping that morning. Her face was drawn with anxiety, eyes rimmed with red. What happened with the bank? He demanded before he had fully entered the room. I'd been calling you all day. James set his briefcase down calmly. I spoke with them an hour ago. There was a security flag on the accounts due to unusual activity. What unusual activity? I was buying a dress. How is that unusual? Not that. James loosened his tie. What's the case? I thought I told you to ask another member. I don't know what to think, Lorraine. First you lie about where you were that night, then these withdrawals appear. I made one mistake. Yes, a terrible one, but I would never steal from our accounts. Tears spilled onto her cheeks. You have to believe me about this, James. Someone must have forged my signature. He watched her for a long moment, assessing the panic in her eyes. Of course, he knew exactly what had happened to the money, nothing. The withdrawal slips were crafted by the same specialist who had provided Michael Reese with access to security footage. The funds remained untouched in their account, but the statements provided to Lorraine told a different story. You'll ask the bank to investigate further, he finally said. But they've frozen all joint accounts pending resolution. You'll need to use your personal account for now. My personal account barely has $2,000 in it. All our finances are joint. I'm aware. James moved to the kitchen and poured himself a whiskey. You can use my card for essentials until this is sorted out. Lorraine sank onto the sofa, clutching the folder. I don't understand what's happening. First the credit cards, now this? James took a slow sip of his drink, studying her over the rim of the glass. There's something else we need to discuss. Well, no. The question came out as a half sob. He set his glass down and retrieved another folder from his briefcase. Amanda Carlyle from Edge magazine came to see me today. Lorraine's head snapped up. Amanda? Why would HR come to you? Because of this? He placed the Edge magazine portfolio on the coffee table. Financial irregularities in the accounts you manage. Personal expenses charged to the company. Falsified event reports. The color drained from Lorraine's face as she flipped through the documents. This is impossible. I've never misused company funds. The evidence suggests otherwise. His tone remained measured, reasonable. Dinner charges at restaurants on nights you told me you were working late. Hotel rooms billed as client accommodations when no clients were present. These are mistakes. Mix-ups. I can explain all of this. I hope so. Amanda expects a response by Monday. After that, Edge's legal team takes over. Lorraine pressed her palms against her eyes. This can't be happening. First the nightclub, now the bank, now my job. She looked up suddenly, eyes narrowing. How did Amanda even know to come to you? Why not confront me directly? She said she wanted to be discreet, given my position in the financial community. That makes no sense. Amanda doesn't even handle PR accounts. That's Jacob's department. For the first time, James detected genuine suspicion beneath Lorraine's distress. He pivoted smoothly. Lorraine, in trying to help you. These are serious allegations. If Edge presses charges for financial misconduct, is that what this is about? Lorraine stood suddenly. Are you doing this? Creating problems with our accounts? Talking to my company behind my back? Why would I sabotage my own wife? James allowed just the right amount of wounded indignation into his voice. Because I hurt you. Because you're punishing me for what happened. James shook his head slowly, the picture of reasonable concern. You're not thinking clearly. You made a mistake, a painful one, yes, but I would never retaliate by trying to destroy your career or our finances. Lorraine stared at him, uncertainty clouding her anger. This was the moment James had anticipated, the seat of doubt, planted carefully among genuine evidence of her betrayal. Was he manipulating events, or was her life simply unraveling as a consequence of her own actions? The beauty lay in the ambiguity. I don't know what to believe anymore, she whispered. Let's focus on one issue at a time, James said, voice softening. The Edge situation is most urgent. You need to prepare a response for Monday. Lorraine nodded numbly, gathering the folders. He'll go through everything tonight. James checked his watch. I need to make some calls about the Tahoe trip. We can discuss this more over dinner. As Lorraine trudged upstairs with the damning documents, James returned to the kitchen and refreshed his whiskey. From the window, he watched the sunset paint the San Francisco skyline in hues of amber and crimson, beautiful and fleeting, like the illusion of their marriage. His phone buzzed with a text from Lawrence Sykes, financial separation preceding his plan. Discovery documents ready for Monday. James typed a quick response, proceed. Lake Tahoe this weekend. We'll finalize strategy upon return. The whiskey burned pleasantly as he swallowed the last sip. Upstairs, he could hear Lorraine's muffled sobs as she confronted the fabricated evidence of professional misconduct modeled precisely on the patterns of her actual infidelity. Poetic in its way. By Sunday evening, Lorraine Foster would return from Lake Tahoe to face 3 simultaneous crises: financial isolation, professional jeopardy, and the final dissolution of her marriage. The weekend retreat wasn't a step toward reconciliation, it was the setting for the coup de grace. James rinsed his glass and placed it in the dishwasher, arranging it precisely in its designated spot. Everything in its proper place. Everything proceeding according to plan. He pulled out his phone once more, scrolling to a contact he had added just yesterday, Sarah Wilson, bartender, the Crimson Room. Confirmed for Saturday night at Tahoe, he texted. 8 p.m. is discussed. The response came almost immediately, all set. She want know what hit her. James smiled faintly as he deleted the exchange. Sarah had been surprisingly eager to participate when he approached her at the Crimson Room last night. Perhaps because he had mentioned the $10,000 payment. Or perhaps because, as she had revealed after her third vodka soda, she too had once trusted someone who betrayed her. Some partnerships were built on love and loyalty. Others on mutual understanding of betrayal's true cost. James checked his reflection in the kitchen window, straightening his already perfect. The man who gazed back at him appeared completely composed, a model of self-control and measured response. Only in his eyes could one glimpse the truth, the cold, methodical determination of a man who had transformed pain into purpose. Upstairs, Lauren continued to search for explanations that didn't exist for evidence that had been meticulously fabricated. She would find none. By Monday morning, her professional reputation would lie in ruins alongside her marriage. The carefully constructed life she had taken for granted and betrayed repeatedly would be dismantled with the same precision with which it had been built. Dinner in 30 minutes, James called up the stairs, his voice betraying nothing of the satisfaction he felt as the pieces of his strategy locked into place. Perfect vengeance required patience, planning, and performance. James Foster excelled at all three. The weekend at Lake Tahoe would be his masterpiece, not of reconciliation, but of reckoning. 1 year later, Central Park stretched before James Foster in a tapestry of autumn colors. Red maples, golden elms, the last stubborn green of summer fading into the crisp October. From his penthouse terrace on the Upper East Side, the view had become his evening ritual, a moment of reflection as day surrendered to dusk. Behind him, the door slid open. Olivia Carson stepped onto the terrace, 2 glasses of Cabernet in hand. At 36, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had built her life through deliberate choices rather than chance. As a corporate ethics attorney, she understood boundaries, consequences, and the delicate architecture of trust, all qualities James had come to value with newfound appreciation. "Beautiful sunset," she remarked, handing him a glass. "It is." James accepted the wine, his fingers brushing hers in a gesture that had become comfortably familiar over the past 6 months. They stood in companionable silence, watching the sun's descent behind the Manhattan skyline. In the year since his divorce from Lorraine had been finalized, James had methodically reconstructed his life. The promotion to senior partner at Hamilton's New York office. The penthouse with its park views. A carefully curated existence, measured and deliberate. The Lake Tahoe weekend had unfolded exactly as planned. Ciro's revelation at the restaurant. The undeniable evidence presented in the presence of witnesses, Lorraine's complete unraveling when confronted with the full scope of her deceptions. The divorce proceedings that followed were swift, clinical, and utterly devastating to Lorraine's finances, reputation, and future prospects. James had left California without looking back, shedding the remnants of his former life like a snake molting old skin. "I heard from Marcus today," Olivia said, referring to her brother who worked at a San Francisco investment firm. "Apparently your ex-wife is working as an assistant at a boutique PR firm now. Starting over from the bottom." James nodded once, acknowledging the information without visible emotion. "And the house finally sold? All below market value, but yes." He took a sip of wine, letting the rich flavor linger on his palate. There had been a time when such news would have brought satisfaction, even pleasure. Now, it was merely information, relevant only as confirmation that the chapter was truly closed. "You never talk about it," Olivia observed, studying his profile in the fading light. "The divorce. What happened?" "There's nothing to say." James turned to her, his expression softening. "The past only matters for the lessons it teaches. I learned mine." Olivia's hand found his on the terrace railing, her touch warm against the cooling evening. Unlike Lorraine, she never pushed for emotional displays or grand gestures. She understood the value of constancy, of promises kept without fanfare. "What about you?" he asked. Any regrets about leaving Chicago? Not one. Her smile reached her eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that had become precious to him. Best decision I ever made. From his pocket, James' phone vibrated with an incoming email. The confirmation had been waiting for the partnership agreement for Hamilton's new London office, naming him as managing director. Another step forward, another calculated advancement. He silenced the phone without checking it. The email could wait. This moment, the sunset, the wine, Olivia's hand and his, deserved his full attention. I was thinking, he said, turning to face her fully, about that trip to Kyoto in the spring. Cherry blossom season. That sounds perfect. She leaned against him, her head finding the familiar spot on his shoulder. As darkness settled over Central Park, James reflected that his revenge against Lorraine had been comprehensive, meticulous, and ultimately successful. But true victory wasn't found in her downfall. It was here, in this quiet moment on a New York terrace, in the capacity to trust again, cautiously, deliberately, with clear eyes and defined boundaries. His new life wasn't built on the ashes of the old one. It was constructed on entirely new ground, with stronger foundations and clearer sight. With Olivia, there were no dramatic confessions at dawn, no desperate attempts at manipulation, no hidden betrayals waiting to be discovered. Just the steady rhythm of two lives aligned in purpose and principle, moving forward together. One deliberate step at a time. James Foster had not just survived betrayal, he had transcended it. And in doing so, he had found something he hadn't known he was searching for, not just revenge, but redemption. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like and share in the comments. Remember, history is a witness to the past, a light of truth, a living memory, a teacher of life, a messenger of antiquity, and see you soon.